Well, welcome back. The last time that we met, we talked about activity fund and bonding, things like that. And I thought there were a couple more points that we should cover. Uh, we're going to have to hit, and then we can move on to some newer territory. So this is your final review, and we're going to talk about the activity fund. We're going to talk about bonding. And then we're going to move on to child nutrition fund and accounting and a little tiny bit on negotiated agreements and a couple other things that might pop up in there. But bottom line, we're going to do our best to give you an overview of things that you need to move forward in your careers. Now, again, like we said last time, not 100% of what we're talking about tonight is going to be on your test, but 100% of what your test is going to be over will be covered tonight. Okay, so not every word of what I say is going to be on the test, but every test question will be within the things that I say. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, well, just to clean up on bonding, I want to make it clear on several things that have to do with bonding. But one of the things I want to revisit and say one more time is that a bond or multiple bonds can only be voted for an amount less than or equal to 10% of the evaluation of the property in the district. So the property evaluation in the district, we all know what that is because it comes out on a list. You're going to know what that is. And when you decide to do a bond in your district, your superintendent will get with a bonding entity, a company that does that. There are two in Oklahoma that do it a lot, and it's Stephen L. Smith out of Tulsa does a little bit, and probably 85% of the bonding in Oklahoma is McDonald and Associates out of Norman. Okay, they've been doing it a long, long time, and they steer you right. Okay, but it's worth saying again that a bond is paid through an increase in property taxes. That's why it's most advantageous to roll an old one off and a new one on. Okay, that way taxes stay flat. If you have to vote one for whatever reason that increases taxes, it always makes things a little bit more difficult. Okay, and we also need to talk about the supermajority. We've talked about it a little bit once before, but remember that bonds are voted in our state and about one other with a 60% supermajority. So bonds are hard to pass. They are not a simple majority, which is 50% plus one. Okay, it isn't fair, but it is the law. Okay, and it is also important to remember that when you're promoting a bond, that a school can't spend their own money on their own behalf saying, please vote yes. You can spend money all day long saying, hey, we're going to have a bond, and these are the details of the bond. This is what the bond's about. This is what the bond will do. This is how much the taxes will raise. But you cannot spend district money saying vote yes. Now you can collect donations and you can start a group that says Friends of, the school or Friends of the Bond or Friends of the Future or whatever you want to call it. And you can spend that money all day long. Okay, you can all sign a piece of paper saying we support the bond. You can give donations yourself in the newspaper, whatever you want to do. That's all fine. You can have yard signs, all that stuff. You just can't spend district money to say vote yes. Okay? All right. As for building the building or completing whatever renovation project or whatever it is that you're going to do with the bond, it is important to understand that if whatever you're doing costs more than about $50,000, or there's some other restrictions too there, but if it costs more than $50,000, the project has to be competitively bid. And there's a process with that. And again, your architect that you choose and your bonding firm will help you with that. So you don't have to be a genius on that. Just follow the rules. Okay, and there's actually a guide for building projects for school administrators. You can look that up at the state website, and it's pretty good stuff. It tells you all the rules, and the rules change. The rules changed a lot about 2010, okay, with dealing with architects and things like that. Rules do change. The fire marshal rule changed. The architect rule has changed. The construction manager rule has changed. Engineering stamps, things like that. Those rules have changed. So you have to be current. And what I can say in this class is that since the rules do change, consult the various documents provided by the State Department to give you absolute detail. But for our purposes, if a building is over $50,000, it must be competitively bid. And there you go. And that's all there is to that. All right. Now let's move forward and talk about activity funds. There's a couple of things that we did not talk about in activity funds, so let's add to that a little bit. We discussed the perils associated with activity funding and the relative looseness that there is in accounting and that sort of things. But there's a couple other things, a couple other facets that we need to discuss. And they're little things, but they could get you in trouble. So let's look at them one at a time. One is the petty cash fund. This is a common sub-account within the activity fund in most schools, but it's different than most of the other sub-accounts. So if the senior class or the chess club or basketball or baseball or football has a sub-account, or third grade or second grade, or Mrs. So-and-so's stamp collecting club, whatever. If there's a sub-account in there, they can carry their money forward from year to year to year. Okay, that's fine. Petty cash cannot. Petty cash must be zeroed out. Okay, at the end of every fiscal year, which means about the 30th of June, it must be zeroed out by the 30th of June. And then if you want to do it again sometime after the 1st of July, you can start it again. Okay, the petty cash fund is sometimes used for the purchase of specific purchases, such as office cleaning supplies, Windex, Kleenex, things like that you might need right quick at the office, and you'll run downtown and you'll buy it from the local grocer or the drugstore or something. That's kind of messy. You have to bring back tickets. You have to justify it all and keep it there in the cash box or petty cash box or drawer, wherever you keep it. You have to record all that. That's kind of messy, okay? But the biggest thing that people use petty cash for is to start cash drawers. So for, if we're going to have a football game tonight, we have to have a cash drawer. If we're going to have a concession stand, we have to have a cash drawer. And you can start a fund like that, the petty cash fund, with a check. We might need $1,000 from general fund. So we write a check. We do a purchase order. We go through the whole process, and we get cash from the general fund for the express purpose of these cash boxes. And we start them. Let's say we put $250 in each one, and we roll that forward at every event. Okay, so you might have half a dozen of them, or you might just have 4. Let's just say you have 4, and there's $250 in each one of them. So there's, one, if you have multiple gates, let's say at the football game, you might have 4 boxes. So you've written a check, a purchase order for $1,000 to go starter cash for these funds, and that's fine. And you can rock along with that. You can put the money, back in. You can do whatever you want to all year long, but at the end of the year, you have to get $1,000 back from that account and put it back into the general fund, and then you zero that account out again. Okay, so for wherever your gate monies went, you might went to athletics, football, whatever, concession stand, they may have their own account, whatever. You can start with general fund monies, but you have to zero it back out. You have to pay that money back. Whatever you started with, you have to put back by the end of the year, fiscal year, which is by June 30th. And then you have to start over again July 1. Okay? And that's what you do. They have to be zeroed out. There's one other fund in the activity fund that is like that. Okay? And that is the refund account. Now, the refund account's a little different, and we don't use these quite as much as we used to, but we used to use them a lot. And, for example, when I was a building principal, I didn't let my kids bring their own locks. We furnished locks. They were special locks. They had a key place on the back, so I had a pass key. I could get into anybody's lock anytime I wanted to, and I didn't have to saw it off. And so we would give them a lock, and they had to pay a deposit, which is basically what the lock would cost. Let's say a $5 deposit to us. And every kid paid a $5 deposit. Now, some kids couldn't pay. Well, I'd pay for them. It's no big deal. I always had a anonymous donor, you might say, who would take care of those kids. So that wasn't ever a big deal. But we would do that. We would charge a deposit. And so we would put those deposits into the refund account. And then at the end of the year, we'd have to zero it out too. So we'd have to give them all back their money. If they gave us the lock back, we gave them back their money. If they didn't give us the lock, they didn't get their money back. Plain and simple. Sometimes coaches charge for certain things that the kids are going to keep. And that's fine. It's just theirs. But sometimes they charge a deposit on things that the kids are going to bring back. Okay, that's not as common anymore, but it used to be. Okay, so we used to use deposits on things like windsuits or warm-up uniforms, things like that. Sometimes the kids would like to run off with those at the end of the year. So we'd charge a little deposit on those, especially if we were going to use them from year to year. So that was the refund account. If they paid too much for a letter jacket and we got them for a better price, we would refund money out of the refund account for that. Different things. Okay, we don't do as much of that as we used to, but it's still there, and it still has to be zeroed out. If you have one, it must be zeroed out. Okay. That's pretty much it. Okay, that's it with that. So those are the things that we've covered for years in this program, and I wasn't necessarily going to cover them. And then I thought, I can't assume that the schools aren't going to do that anymore, that everybody knows this. So I decided to throw them back in. Okay. Let's talk about one of the sleeping giants in your school, and that is the Child Nutrition Program. Now, the Child Nutrition Program, or CNF, is a big deal. It came about as part of the Great Society programs in the 60s. It's a big deal. So think Head Start, think Title I, things like that. They all came about at the same time, and they were designed to help disadvantaged kids do better in school. A well-fed kid, theoretically, is going to do better than a kid who's hungry. And that's really what it's all about. Okay? So, Child Nutrition Fund came about. It didn't exist, and then all of a sudden it existed. So, it is what it is. It's a separate fund. It's not the activity, and it's not the general. It's not a sinking fund or a bond fund. It's its own fund. It's a CNF fund. Okay, what can you do with this money? Well, you can pay the salaries of cafeteria personnel. You can pay the director. You can pay cooks. You can pay maintenance or a custodian. You can buy food. You can buy equipment. You can do stuff for your kids. Okay, all these things can be purchased through the CNF fund. Cleaning supplies, things like that. Okay, plates, knives, forks, napkins, all that stuff can be purchased through the CNF fund. The general fund can help a little bit with custodial cost or a few incidental costs here and there, but it's important that the CNF fund be able to support itself. Otherwise, the cafeteria will become a drain on the other funding areas, and that's a bad deal. And frankly, it's illegal. It's a little bit illegal, just a little bit illegal. So don't do it, okay? You can loan the Child Nutrition Fund some general fund money, but you have to pay it back at the end of the year, kind of like those other two funds that we talked about earlier. It's only a certain amount. It's not very much, and it's a percentage thing. It changes from year to year, but you can loan, the general fund can loan the Child Nutrition some money. Yes, they can. They can. They can. You don't want to do it. It's kind of messy, and a lot of schools don't worry about it. They just do it anyway. Well, that's okay until you get caught. And when you get caught, it's a Fed thing. And the state will say, well, we just didn't know that they were doing this. We took them at their word. My goodness, my goodness. And the hand wringing begins, and it's all on you. So don't do it. Do not loan the Child Nutrition Fund money if you can help it at all. There will be that odd instance when you have to. I loaned some one time. I loaned about $15,000 to the Child Nutrition Fund to buy new tables and chairs. We had built a new cafeteria, and the bond fund was running low. We didn't have enough money in child nutrition to pay it all at once, so I loaned it out of my general fund, and then we paid it back as soon as we had enough money saved up, if you will, in the Child Nutrition Fund. That's not illegal, but you have to do it right. Okay, you have to tag all the bases. So ideally, the Child Nutrition Fund should have enough money, should carry over enough money at the end of the year so it could run 3 months after school starts without getting any money. It could run for 3 months without going into the hole. Okay, if you carry over more than that, okay, so I'm saying enough money to buy all the food, pay for all the incidentals, pay for the cooks, pay for the director, pay the light bill, pay whatever you pay. 3 months worth of that, okay? And then theoretically, after about a month and a half, you're going to start collecting your money again, and you should be fine. So they're saying save enough to get by until you start collecting your money for next year, but don't try to get rich on this fund, okay? If you have more carryover than that, the state and the feds get nervous because they think you're trying to make money on the back of poor kids. Because what is this Child Nutrition Fund for? It's to help disadvantaged kids. Again, it's just like, think of it this way. It's just like Head Start. It's just like Title I, okay? It is a boost for kids who cannot afford to eat well ordinarily or otherwise. Now, kids who have money can come and eat in the cafeteria, or they can bring their own lunch. They can do what they want, okay? We're not as worried about them per se, but we are worried about the kids who have no other outlet. Okay, and that's what the Child Nutrition Fund is all about. Okay. It's becoming kind of fashionable, and I don't like this. Don't mind telling you. Some of you guys work at schools that do this, and I think it's wrong, and lazy. But it is becoming more fashionable for schools to farm out their cafeteria to contractors. And contractors exist, folks, to make money. And if they can pay all your people, okay, if they can pay all the cooks, if they can buy all the food, and if they can get all the subs, and if they can clean all the floors, and if they can do all that stuff, and make money to pay their home office staff and pay their salaries too, then I would think you can do it yourself and make that money for yourself and serve your kids better, okay? Most of them don't make a profit. I have done research into it. I have let a company go who was a contractor because they were going in the hole. And they said they weren't, but they were, and it was sizable. I would rather go in the hole giving my kids all an extra scoop of food instead of giving them 4 French fries and you know, 6 tater tots and calling it a day. That's not my thing. Maybe I'm old fashioned, but I'm telling you that is not the spirit of the service. That's not what the Child Nutrition Fund is all about, and I'm against it. Okay, I'm against it. We need to do our best for our kids, and if we can't, we need to find somebody who can. Meaning that we need to get somebody else besides ourselves to do that job. We need to just say, hey, I can't do it. I don't want to get a sub for the cafeteria, so I don't want to be a principal or a superintendent. Okay, I'm on my soapbox. There you go. But I think it's bad. All right. If for some reason you're in a school that does that, start asking questions. If you're in a school that's low, free and reduced, and so your kids, you're trying to compete with, whatever, kids bringing their lunch or whatever, and you want something different, that's maybe a different thing. So long as we have a fail-safe, we have a net there, safety net for the kids who can't afford. That's a big deal. It's important to me. I hope it's important to you. Ask questions. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Okay? And if they tell you that all cafeterias go in the hole, well, they're being dishonest. They're not telling you the truth. Run from those folks. Okay? Do it yourself. Do it yourself. Do it yourself. Do your homework before signing anything, because you are standing in the gap for your kids. That's enough about that. Now, CNF funds are one of the largest programs in your school. And they come from the Great Society. I've already told you they're like Title I and Head Start. It's a big deal. They do a lot of good for your kids academically and financially, and they pay your district several different ways. Not only does the district get reimbursed for free and reduced meals, but you get paid 25% of a kid, and your funding formula on your weighted ADM about $750 a kid right now, and that'll only go up probably. But they also bleed over into your Title I funding formula and most directly into your E-rate funding formula, which is your technology stuff from E-rate, the Universal Service Program, that the government helps you pay your phone bill and your internet access. And it's a big deal. Okay, so get it right and you will benefit. Get it wrong and you'll be looking for a job, because they'll fire you and hire somebody who does get it right. CNF free and reduced benefits are calculated on a scale based on household income and the number of household members based on the poverty level at a given time. And it's not as hard to get free and reduced now as it used to be. And you had to used to be really, really poor. And now, since there's so many blended families and things like that, there's more family members, and so it's easier. It seems to be easier, at least in my experience, I should say. Okay. It changes yearly, but you don't have to worry about that because the formula is given to you, and all the forms are already pre-populated with that. Parents self-report, so you don't have to chase them around and get copies of their income tax and things like that. And there are methods of direct certification, which is a big deal. And there are some automatics. Homeless kids are automatically free. Foster children are usually automatically free. Kids who are awaiting foster care, maybe not. That's kind of a new thing. But anyway, we track those things, and we keep track of them because they benefit us in multiple ways. And certainly, Child Nutrition Fund is one of those things that we want to get right, because it helps your school in many, many ways, and lots of ways that as a classroom teacher, you may have never even considered at all. So when they said collect those papers, you may have not thought it was a big deal. You will think it is a big deal when you are a principal. I'll just promise you that. Okay? If you don't, they're going to find somebody who does think it's a big deal. And you'll be looking for a job. Simple as that. I love you, but I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay, let's talk about OCAS coding. OCAS coding. OCAS is the Oklahoma Cost Accounting System. It's a methodology that 99% of all the schools in Oklahoma use to track, collect, and disperse district funds. Some schools don't. Very few don't. Norman doesn't. Maybe there's a couple of others that use standard accounting practices, but for everybody else in Oklahoma, OCAS is king. It's important to note that accountants don't consider OCAS part of standard accounting practices, and they don't like it much. Okay, that's why the state has an approved list of CPAs that do school audits. Okay, they're pre-cleared. They're saying we understand OCAS and we will audit it accordingly. Not everyone wants to, who's a CPA, and not everybody knows how. Okay, it's a different animal. Get over it. It's a different animal. It's not the same thing. So if you used to be a CPA, OCAS is different. One of my friends is a CPA and he's a school superintendent. And it's like being Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, sort of. It's just different. Okay? So, we are audited every year by these folks. It's not a forensic audit in terms of, they're not looking for something bad or something irregular so much as they are confirming that the process is followed. Okay? Understand me. Understand me when I say that. We're confirming that the process was followed. We're not necessarily looking for criminality. Okay? They find it sometimes, but that's really not the purpose. They're looking to see if we truly are following the process. Okay? So the best way to do that is follow the process. Okay? Get it right. Seems like I've said that before. Get it right. Every dollar has a code number. It's a fund, an object, a function, or even a year code number attached to it. Okay? And there's a big rule book called the Technical Assistance Document, and I even have a copy of it attached to this class that comes each year to explain it and how your clerks and secretaries will know it well. There's also an OCAS manual that explains all this too. You'll know it somewhat, but you'll not use it every day as a principal. You will, however, need to make sure that your secretary or your clerk, knows it. And since it changes every year, there's continual training that is done for secretaries and clerks, and you should attend that too. Not all the time, but occasionally you need to attend those. OCAS isn't that tough, but it is rigid. There is a correct way to purchase within OCAS. There's a way to do it correctly. So I have written it out here, and it'll be in the script, and I'll attach the script to the video. It'll be there. But here basically is it. The purchaser finds out what they need and gets a price. Purchaser is usually a teacher or coach or somebody like that. Be sure to offer them help. If you don't, they always pay too much. I had a teacher last week want to pay $80 too much for the exact same thing that I found her from a different vendor. And we saved the money and all is well. But had I not known that that particular vendor that she was going to use was high as a cat's back, I would have let that go. And I wouldn't have caught that. And we would have wasted about $80. So, offer to help them. If you don't offer to help them, they're going to pay too much. I just tell my folks that, hey, you can put down whoever you want to, but if I can find the exact same thing cheaper, then don't have your feelings hurt if I don't use your vendor. Okay? If there's a reason why you want to use that vendor and pay the extra money, you better come tell me, and it better be a good reason, because otherwise I'm going to buy you that exact same thing somewhere else cheaper. Okay? If I can't, then good on you. You've done your job. Okay, so they find out what they need and they get a price. 2, they fill out two. I got to get in the camera. Step 2. They fill out a purchase request and present it to their principal or director. The principal, if he approves it, brings it to the superintendent or business manager for approval. So that is 3. If the principal approves it, he brings it to the superintendent. If it's approved there, then it is converted by central office personnel into a purchase order. That is step 4. Okay? If the clerk determines that enough money is available, because that is the clerk's job, they need to say, if they make a PO, they are saying that there's enough money there. Okay? If the money isn't available in a specific fund or budget area, the process may slow down a bit until an alternate code path can be found. Okay? An alternate code path can be found. I'm not telling you no, but we got to figure out a way to do it right. Okay? And then 5. Once it becomes a PO, general practice says that it may be ordered. 6. In the meantime, it is presented to the BOE, which is Board of Education, at the next board meeting for approval or disapproval. 99.9% of the time, they approve it. Okay? Once received, okay, so we've already ordered it, the board has approved it, here it comes. Once it comes in, you, the purchaser, the teacher, whoever, looks it over, and if it's okay, they sign the packing slip. They signify that the item is being received. Okay? And then we're good. Once the packing slip is received by the purchasing clerk, the invoice may be paid by the school. No invoice or packing slip, no pay. Simple, huh? Well, it actually is. Teacher staff, and don't be too soft, and the process will work just fine. There are fail-safes in place for emergencies. If somebody's out and they ruin a tire and they have to get the kids back, we're going to buy them a tire. We're going to get on down the road. We're going to be fine. But that's the deal. Just remember, if they don't follow procedure, and some won't sometimes, you can get into trouble. Make sure they follow the rules. Remember that we've talked before about no good deed goes unpunished. Well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? If you let somebody continually get by with not following the rules, they're going to get you in trouble. It's plain and simple. They will do it. Okay? So don't let them do that. All right. Now we're going to switch gears completely. We're going to talk about something else. You need to know it as a principal. It does affect funding in a big way sometimes, but we're going to talk about negotiated contracts. Now, some districts have negotiated contracts, some don't. And I used to think it was just a big district thing, and then I was superintendent at a district. When I got hired, they were at impasse. And I thought, you've only got 400 kids, you got 40 teachers, why are you at impasse? And they had a local teacher association, they had voted, they were going to have a negotiated agreement, and frankly they were being taken advantage of by the administration before me, and I had to go in and clean all that up. So it does happen. So let's talk about that. Since 85% of all school money goes to salaries, this is a big deal. Most schools just pay the state minimum and don't negotiate, but many schools have negotiated agreements with teacher and staff. They might even have administrators. Chickasha has an administrators local, and they negotiate with administrators. Not very many do that, but some do. So all it takes is 50% of the membership of a teacher association. So 50% of the teachers have to belong to OEA or something like that. And then over 50% of them have to vote to negotiate. And the school is bound by law to follow that. Okay? Most districts negotiate in good faith. Okay? And they need some things from the teachers, and the teachers need some things from them. Might be time off, might be money. They might want all their teachers to have a master's degree, or they might want, various things. They might want an extra hour a day out of their teachers for tutorial things or mentoring or whatever. Anything you can work into that contract from a financial side. Schools want something for nothing. Teachers want to get paid for everything. You work it out. You come to an agreement. If you can't come to an agreement, then you're considered to be in impasse. And if you're in impasse, that means that you just work on last year's contract until you work it out. I was in a district one time. We were at impasse for a couple of years. Okay, and we finally had to work it out. We had to go to arbitration, which is when an independent arbiter comes in and he listens to both sides and says, well, you're being unreasonable and you're being unreasonable. I think this will get it worked out. Now, the local board still has to approve that, so it's not a perfect situation. But that's the deal, okay? Very few go to impasse. Most all the time, negotiations happen in good faith. Okay. If you go to impasse and you can't resolve, it can tear a community apart. It can tear a school district up. I've seen it with my own eyes. And it takes years to get over that. So that's bad news, okay? And if you don't go to the table with a pure heart, with the best interest of your school and the kids in mind, then it's going to be bad, okay? If either or both of the parties involved don't come to the table with the best interest of the students in mind, it can go bad, okay? It can tear a school or community apart, I promise. Okay, we're almost finished. So basically, here we go. We have this finance class. We could meet every day, 8 hours a day. We could dig into the minutia of school finance, even deeper than we've gone. And they would change all the rules next year. And so we didn't go deep into the minutia in this class. I gave you a good, solid overview of school finance. And I've given you documents that you can go back and look at over and over. These films are out there on YouTube. You can watch them again and again. And as you get older in your profession, deeper into administration, the things I've said here will make more sense to you. And so that will be there. I also want you to know that you've gotten a good overview, and I hope that it has opened some eyes. But don't be overwhelmed. Just take what you've learned here and continue to build on it as you move forward in your career. You're not going to be a genius about finance because you took this class. You're just going to know more than 99% of your peers. Okay? Because they don't know. Think of all the things where you went, wow, I didn't know that. Well, they still don't. Okay? I'm here for you. I'm always going to be available to you as a resource. I've been at this for 30 years, and something new still comes along from time to time. Don't stress about that. Just know it's going to happen, okay? And don't worry about it. Just keep working. You can do this. I know that you can. I've enjoyed being with you in this class. And I'll tell you what, your profession needs you. So God bless you and have a good evening.